some of the bills that we're looking at. So, John, we have
Maybe mute things here.
have you mute? Yes.
All right.
Good. Yep. Sounds good. Just so that you know who you're speaking with today, John, we'll just do a quick round of introductions. We don't have everyone available this afternoon, unfortunately. It's sugaring season and it's lambing season. And we have a ag committee of practitioners. So I'm David Durfee. Nice to see you. I live in Shaftesbury, down in Bennington County.
Chen Lipsky, live in Stowe, represent Memorial One. Stowe.
Yeah, Richard Nelson, Orleans One, Derby.
Michelle Boslin, Westminster, Brookline, and Rockingham in Northern Wyndham County.
Heather Supernat, Windsor 4, Barnard, Pomfret, Water, West Hartford.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm John Adams, Director of the Center for Geographic Information, part of the Agency of Digital Services. And I have a slide deck for you. There are a lot of slides in it that I will go through fairly quickly, but feel free to stop me at any point if you have questions, or you can go back to them as well. So briefly, what does VCGI do? A big part of what we do is build the foundational data sets. So what we call our spatial data infrastructure, those key data sets that allow other people to build things from. We lead our development of our statewide geographic information system. So that involves a lot of cat herding and coordinating with other agencies, making sure we aren't duplicating efforts, working together so that all of our mapping data can be put together in the same system. And then we empower data access, visualization, and use. So provide some of these things in easy to use web map viewers and make it available in a single place. But what is a geographic information system, or a GIS? Essentially, you can think of it as data that is tied to its location, and allowing us to put it into a system and layer things on top of each other. So you can often think of it as, you have your layer, your roads, your water, your buildings, and you put things into a system, then ask questions of it, see patterns, different trends, perform spatial analysis, and you could use this for many different uses, which I won't go through. If you are interested, there is a link there to our 2024 year in review, which has around 50 or so different examples of how things are being used in different agencies throughout the state. In terms of the background or history, some of our roots or origins actually come from the tax department and the Vermont mapping program, where they had the state's first aerial imagery program, and they used that to help create some of those early tax maps. Later on, when Act 200 was passed in 1988, it created the Office of GIS in state government, and then later in 1992, that would become VCGI. We were outside of government for a while. We came back in 2015 and joined the Agency of Digital Services when that was created. Lots changed since 1992. This is Bruce Westcott, VCGI's first director on public access. At the time, our entire database was 17 megabytes, fits on 12 floppy disks. We had 107 users. They would fill out mail order cards, and we had a staff person that would copy the disks and then send that out to them. Things look a little bit differently now. Most everything is on the web, either available for download or you can stream it, much like you would stream a movie. Now, you can stream map data in these map viewers. We work with municipalities, RPCs, and other state agencies, and we make everything available in a single statewide geodata portal. So you can go there, search for whichever data set you're interested in, and then create your own map or bring it into software if you have that or use it. In 2024, we had really an astounding number of users. We have around 250,000 unique users. So it's become more or less a basic government service that people now expect, a long way from those 107 folks in 1992 that were using this. So when I talked about building that foundation or that spatial data infrastructure, we follow the guidelines and directions of the Federal Geographic Data Committee and our partners in other states that identify these are what we call the framework themes, and from these, most other data can be derived, or these are sort of those highest value, most necessary data that others depend on. So we manage some of these programs like our imagery, elevation, governmental units, so boundaries, parcels, land cover, and work with E911, E911 board on E911 data, VTrans on transportation, and a number of other partners on hydrography. I'll talk a little bit about elevation. So for elevation, we use this or derive it using LiDAR data. How many of you are familiar or have heard of LiDAR data in the past? It's essentially we have a sensor that is mounted to a plane. It can be ground mounted, or you can have it in your car, but we have some very sophisticated ones that are mounted to airplanes, and then they scan the face of the Earth or from up. And it returns from that, we get billions, or this last go around, we got around 1 trillion points measurements. So we get a very accurate X, Y, and Z or Z. I may have outed myself as a Canadian there, measurement, but and we get a point cloud. So this right here in the foreground, you see National Life and the State House in the background. So that's what our raw point cloud looks like. We process that into different returns. So those points will get first returns when they hit like the top of trees, and then finally when it hits the surface of the Earth, we get that final return, and those are classified. And then we can do things like rip the trees and buildings off and get that bare Earth, which can be very useful for doing things like modeling where water goes. We've had quality level 2 LiDAR since 2017. This was a fairly remarkable difference in terms of resolution from what we were working for just a decade ago. Here's an example. So that red little box, this is what it looks like. In 2010, we were working with a 30-meter resolution, and then up until 2017, we had 10-meter, and now we're actually moved down to 0.35 meters, so even higher resolution than that 0.7. It's the equivalent of thinking of that first TV show that was broadcast in the 20s, which was around. We have 4K now. It would have been just 30 with no K then, and going from that first TV to program to like 8K resolution now. So a world of difference in a relatively short amount of time. Here's that bare Earth model, quality level 2 of the National Life parking lot. You can see right there, and here's our more recent quality level 1, which was flown statewide in 2023. With that, we can combine it with our ortho imagery. We manage the state's ortho or aerial imagery program, not to be confused with ornitho imagery, which would be imagery of birds. I once gave a presentation on our ortho imagery program when we were asking for money for the program and was asked why we were taking pictures of birds. That is not what we do, although that would be a very cool job. But using ortho imagery and LiDAR together, you can do things like derive high resolution land cover. And we work with the University of Vermont to do this. They are leaders in the country in using machine learning techniques to automate land cover and feature extraction. Here's again a view of that LiDAR data. They can extract building footprints, which we can use for lots of things, like helping identify missing E911 points, for example. I talked a little bit about, or I suggested, one of the big benefits of this is that we can see where water goes, and we're now working with the USGS and other partners on LiDAR-derived streams in rivers, which this is a pilot that was done in the state of Washington by one of our colleagues. And you can see the pink line is sort of what we currently have, and the blue line is where the water actually is. And those can be fairly different. The existing water lines, many of which were done in the 80s using some relatively coarse imagery done by hand. And then with that, you can do things like improve our flood modeling. So this example is showing FEMA's flood insurance rate map. This is some work that UVM had done. So not only improving maybe the location or the accuracy of those, but giving us finer resolution or more information. So this is showing our 2, 5, 10, 25, 50-year floodplains as opposed to just 100 or nothing, 100 or 500. As we get, as we'll now have 2 vintages, which is really interesting. And we've also been, UVM and their drone team has sensors that they can mount on their drones, which is great for specific areas. And this is showing the Cotton Brook landslide in the Waterbury area, the before and after. And using some of this information, we can help identify areas at high risk, or start to see some of the patterns of where either landslides happened or where they are likely to happen. And some of this proved useful in our more recent flooding events. So this is an application we put together to help visualize and capture some of the damage with UVM's drone team, which they did also capture additional LiDAR and allowed them to measure things like, see here the difference from where there was a landslide or some erosion happening. And I think transition there over to parcel data. So parcel data, by far most heavily used data in the state. It takes ownership information, so the grand list, and thanks to the span as the unique identifier, we then take the geometry, so the lines showing where the parcels are, and as long as we have a span for those, we can combine them together to create our parcel data. Parcel program has been around since around 2020, when thanks to a big project with VTrans, we were able to complete statewide parcel mapping. It is still a voluntary program in terms of getting data from municipalities. So we reach out to them and they provide us with updated data depending on how often they have it or when they update it. A few of those metrics. So we've got around 340,000 parcels, a relatively high match rate, so only 2.2% unmatched parcels. And you can see that final number there, 1.1 million unique views. So that's over 1 million times our parcel viewer was accessed last year. It's a screenshot of our parcel viewer here, showing how you can export or select some parcels and then export some data, save it as a table or Excel file, showing you that owner information. So 90% of towns across Vermont do maintain their parcel data. It doesn't always mean that it ends up in our hands, or it's not all maybe of the same quality, but this shows you here for a voluntary program, it is some fairly successful in that we have over close to 200 towns that we have managed to update within the past 2 years and 144 within the past 1 year. Another part of this program that started a few years ago is the land survey library. So when surveys are done of new subdivisions or boundary line adjustments, surveyors are supposed to send us a digital copy of that. So we now have around 2,200 or probably closer to 2,500 now surveys that you can access within this that are mapped. You can go to the parcel and select it and see if there is a parcel. It is, and then there are some towns here, you can see those towns that are lit up there. Mount Holly is a good example where the town clerk there has been taking their records and backfilling and putting it into the survey library, as they've found that useful, which is great. Making this more accessible for that, we can take it for those. You remember I said there are 90% of towns that maintain parcel data. Some towns are quite small and don't have the either capacity, or maybe there isn't very much happening there. With those towns, we can take this and help update it for those municipalities using the updated surveys that get submitted. Just this past year, we've also worked with the tax department to take their property transfers, and now we have an automated process that will map those and make those available in a map viewer or for download for people to use. So you can start seeing some of our property transfer data mapped over time. We have it back until 2019, and it's updated on a weekly basis right now.
I can tell where Stowe is.
It's lime green.
Yeah, lime green.
Question.
Yes.
Did you ever, I was at the Vermont Forest Summit last year, and it was a big presentation on LiDAR, where they were actually replacing foresters for volumes and of tree stands.
Mhm.
Did you present at that?
I did not
You did.
present at that, but it can be used for quite a few things, and forestry is definitely a
Okay.
strong use case for using LiDAR.
There's some countries that are doing, stand inventories, a lot of detail.
And will be one of the projects that we're doing is we'll be publishing out essentially the tree crowns for every tree in the state with its height. So fairly right now we do have our land cover, which shows a tree covered area in deciduous and coniferous, but this next version, thanks to the increased resolution, will essentially literally have every tree. Won't know what species it is, or won't have it. That's always the next questions that come whenever we publish these things. Someone comes and asks us for the next thing, which we currently can't do, but someone may figure it out. In terms of some of the things that are what's coming next, this is the cover of the Act 68 statewide reappraisal report that we coordinated with the tax department and added some recommendations in. So as things begin to modernize, things like digital land records, which at some point in the future will exist, and the computer assisted mass appraisal data collected by municipalities. Currently, don't have access to that. But we are hoping, or in the future, we'll be able to leverage some of that information that they're all collecting to add more information to our tax map data. And that allows us to do things like, this is something we put together a few weeks ago when there was a request asking around about the 3 mile buffer around the designated areas. I think I can open a link to this app, see if this works. Perils of the live demo here. But if you haven't seen this, you have a link to it in the slides that I sent, and this allows you to visualize those areas in green that are within the buffer, the gray ones that are not. Those bubbled areas, those are the 3 mile buffers. You can turn on a few different other layers. We do have a 1 mile, for example. We wanted to see what that looked like. And then some of our aerial imagery or land that's in our protected lands database as well. And tools here, if you wanted to measure area or distance, just select those and check those out.
So John, the designated area buffer, those are discrete 1 mile, 3 mile options. You can't plug in your own. Like I'd like to see a half mile, for example. That's something we've been talking about.
Right. We could certainly add that, but it's not something you can do dynamically right now.
Representative Nelson?
John, could you back at the other one, like at the 1 mile, could you get data from that and then tell how many acres of current use land were inside of those circles?
We could tell you how many parcels intersect and what the acreage we have for those are. One important caveat I should probably mention is, so the tax department has given us the list of parcels that are enrolled in current use. We don't actually know what area in those parcels are in current use. So we can tell you the entire size of the entire parcel, but that doesn't necessarily tell you how much of it is enrolled in current use or not.
That output would be, so we're looking at maps, but you can also get data sets that come out. I'm not sure if that's what Representative Nelson was asking, but is that the case?
Yes, yeah. If you have a specific question, don't hesitate to reach out. Some of these things are pretty easy for us to do. Others might not be, but we'll tell you if that's something we can't do. But if the data is available, and in our system, such as we have parcel data, we have the designated areas. If it's a simple calculation, or tell me how many these parcels are within X miles, and we can give you the measurements of those. Other things that we don't have, like the specific areas that are in current use of those parcels, we don't have that information. It would be great at some point in time.
What are the gray circles?
The gray circles within, those are the 1 miles we just has toggled on. 1 mile buffers around the designated areas.
And are all those gray circles, do they have public water or public sewer, or they're just the designated village centers.
They're just the designated village centers or downtowns or growth centers.
The land survey, you mentioned that one town, Mount Holly, maybe had done a really good job. It's strictly voluntary. Towns are invited to contribute, but there's no requirement.
The parcel,
It was.
I noticed that.
the parcel program is voluntary. The survey library, almost all of the submissions we get are directly from surveyors and they're new surveys. But there's nothing, and we encourage people to submit old surveys as well, as this is useful, and the Mount Holly clerk thought it was useful, and they put in all of the surveys they had in their town records, which is great.
And even the parcels, that's voluntary and a pretty high, sounded like pretty high participation rate. What incentive is there other than don't want to be left, the last one, I guess, not to be part of the program?
Yeah, it's a good question. And we would like to, create more incentives, but by doing things like having the parcel viewer available that is accessed a million times a year, we've made it so that it's useful to them.
Yeah.
I think we also have two great folks on our team working on that program who are doing, outreach and making those connections. And then the other part is there's a limited number of maybe vendors that are working with municipalities. So they now know if they're doing an update to send us that information. And that has been helpful as well. Leading up to 2020, the Agency of Transportation and 7 other agencies contributed to paying for it to be done statewide. So they all started from a certain baseline, and it's the updates that are voluntary. But right now in the statewide appraisal program, we are looking at some changes that may help to incentivize municipalities to submit data and to submit data that's of increasingly high quality.
Well, we have your interactive map up there. Could you just show us at a state level, just land that has parcels enrolled in current use?
What the contrast on the screen is there, but
Yeah.
those slightly darker.
You can see the national forest running up there that wouldn't have any eligible land.
And the state forest located as well as national forest.
Right now, that light gray area is just showing parcels enrolled in current use as provided to us by the tax department by their SPAN number. The protected lands database, so if you turn that on, those light green areas, those are parcels that we have in our database that have some kind of easement or protection on them as well. So that includes state lands. Those would show up in those green areas, as does the Green Mountain National Forest.
And then what we see, that number in the lower left-hand corner, that large number, is that, that's from an earlier query, or?
That's the 3 mile buffer
Yeah.
query.
Right, well, it's quite fascinating.
I think that had covered all of my.
You got through your slides, okay. you were unusually quiet during your presentation and didn't interrupt with questions. So I want to be sure that if there are other questions, people get a chance.
If you have thing at home, I play with that all night long.
So do we all have access to some of it, John? Is it if there's a link there in one of the slides?
Yes, yeah, everything that we have is public and available online. There's a link to that specific viewer on that last slide, as well as a few of the other ones we highlighted throughout here. But if there's something that you can access or are interested in, don't hesitate to reach out and we will get it to you if it exists, or let you know if it doesn't.
And are you making that offer to us as legislators, or is the public also able to make requests?
The public can anyone is welcome to make requests, and we do receive a lot of requests. We can't do sort of custom or and on demand sort of spatial analysis for everyone, but we do help state agencies and the legislature with some of those questions if we're able to have capacity, or if it's something we can do easily.
Great. Thank you very much. Really glad that you could share that with us. And we now that we know a little bit more about the tool, we may be reaching out from time to time.
Definitely. Thank you for inviting me.
And are you located at the National Life Building?
We are, yes.
Yeah, you're kind of a subset of A&M.
We are part of the Agency of Digital Services,
Service.
but work very closely with A&R and most agencies.
ANR is up there, digital services. Is there another agency or branch that's located up there in the National Life Building?
We are in the Dewey Building in the parking lot with where you can get a hunting license.
Yeah. Fish and Wildlife.
Fish and
Fish and
yeah.
Wildlife is over, yeah.
And I know I think education is there now. Transportation was there. They're no longer there. Agency of Commerce is still there.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Well, thanks. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, are you Julia?
I am.
Hi, Julia. So we're, let me just pause this here.
If those are email as well. So.
Entirely up to you. Yeah. So just for the committee's reference, we're going to take some testimony now from a resident of East Montpelier who asked to testify on H-291. That is one of the current use bills, and it's the one that deals with coasted land. So we've been taking testimony on all three of these bills and different provisions, and would be happy to hear from you on this one.
Okay, yes.
You could just introduce yourself for the record.
Sure. My name is Julia Barstow. I'm a resident of East Montpelier. I just read from this. Dear esteemed members of the House Agricultural Committee, my name is Julia Barstow, and I'm here to testify in regards to H-291, a bill to tax land at a higher rate in the current use program for being posted. My parents, Rick and Betsy Barstow, and I live on 980 Sodom Pond Road in East Montpelier. My father, Rick Barstow, purchased this abandoned hill farm with 62 acres in 1972. The land has been in current use program for decades. Activities include maple sugaring, which I just left this afternoon, and everyone else is collecting right now, haying, forestry, responsible logging, milling lumber, cutting firewood, and removing invasive plants. We consider ourselves good stewards of this precious land. We recently received the distinction of bird-friendly maple from the Audubon Society. Another activity on this land is my mother's preschool. She's a registered family child care home provider and an Act 166 Universal Pre-K partner. And here's the flyer for her enrollment with photos that I took of the children of the land. Her program is a nature-based Spanish language program. The core of the curriculum is exploring the forests and fields. For the safety of the children, we post the land so that the children are not at risk from the activities of hunters or like wolf traps. Posting our land does not diminish the fact that we are conscientious stewards. We are in opposition to H291 as we do not want to be penalized for caring for the well-being of the children in my mother's preschool. We feel that other people who are enrolled in the current use program may also have very good reasons for posting their property. And a note that we do allow people to walk on the land. It's just the trapping and hunting that we restrict. Respectfully, Julia. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Julia. You're not far from here.
No, yeah.
And so thank you for coming in person. And I don't know if this is your first time testifying, but
It is, yes.
Yes.
I'm in to witness others' testimony and support those as my first.
well, I know it can be, I don't want to say necessarily intimidating, but maybe not always an easy thing to do. So appreciate your making the effort. And we just ask the committee if anybody has any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Would and I appreciate everything you're all doing there, and just like you're actively posted signs up every 400 feet, corners are well marked, because it is a big undertaking to post.
It is,
land.
yeah.
I understand that. Do you feel that if you went to, and I'm just asking,
Sure.
if you went to hunting by permission only,
Mhm.
which could be a way to loophole around through this? And of course, being located as close as you are to more metropolis than I am, your phone may ring incessantly off the hook. I just asking if
Sure.
that would,
I guess I don't know the technicalities of that. Would that mean that we're not posted, but how would we make clear that it's like only by permission? I'm not sure the
well,
technicalities.
when people call and ask, you just say no.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know growing up, there would be times where people would come up the driveway and ask and
Yeah.
check in with us. And yeah, so it could be a possibility, but with the children there, it feels like, if someone was like, oh, well, I got permission the other week, but didn't know the full circumstances or didn't respect
Mhm.
that
I
would be a bit of
understand.
a challenge.
I understand.
Representative Lipsky.
If follow-up comment, your letter is powerful to the
It
nth
is.
degree. I congratulate your family and all the diverse, uses of your land, and I think this is amazing.
Thank-
And they sound like pretty amazing folks.
They are, that's why I'm still there next to them, returning back.
So, and
Yeah, I guess I'll just say too, it feels like, everything that you consider has such nuance and affects people in such different ways. I just wanted to give this perspective of what our activities are on our land and how it's maybe not as cut and dry as it might seem.
Representative Supranat.
I too support the kind words of both committee members about what you're doing. And I was curious if you think that there would be support for the legislation if there are specific exemption carve-outs that existed, and saying that folks who do have these very specific and nuanced components to consider, that posting would still be very much appropriate and not to shift anything. But for those who do not have those, do you think you would feel more supportive of
I
something like
think, I
that?
think I would feel more supportive in that as long as, that was very clearly communicated to all the folks in current use, so that would affect and that it wouldn't be burdensome to make those requests on either end of the process.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you all.
All right, I'm gonna suggest that we just pause briefly. And we will come back in a couple of minutes and do gonna say this, legit. We're gonna come back in a couple of minutes and I think we'll have our vote on H96. And then if I can get that in. Thank you. So well, let's just briefly go off the air and we'll come back and